The first Ottoman troops arrived outside Constantinople on April 1st, 1453. 4 days later, Sultan Mehmed arrived and began directing preparations for the siege. The Ottomans had about 100,000 troops, 60 cannons, and 126 ships. Their cannons were bombards, the medieval ancestor of actual cannons. Though these bombards were inaccurate, they were effective at breaking through city defenses. On the other side, the Byzantines had about 38,000 troops, 15 cannons, and 26 ships. Even though the Ottomans had more ships, Constantinople's Venetian and Genoese allies had better ships and more experience in naval warfare. Giovanni Giustiniani was responsible for the walls, where Constantine XI and his guard held back as a reserve unit. On April 6, 1453, the Ottoman bombards opened fire on Constantinople, blasting its walls with gigantic round stones. Despite its ferocity, this initial barrage was largely ineffective. The cannons and missiles were so large that it took nearly 3 hours to reload them. This gave the Byzantines enough time to repair whatever damage they caused. The next day, Ottoman infantry attacked the walls. Hundreds of scaling ladders were hastily thrown against the walls as the soldiers raced to meet the city's defenders. But the Byzantines were prepared. They repelled the Ottoman attackers with stones, arrows, spears, pikes, boiling water, and boiling oil. The Ottomans did manage to take out a few Byzantine cannons, but they were primarily unsuccessful in these attacks and lost countless soldiers for minimal gain. The Byzantines also attempted to go on the offensive. On April 8th and April 9th, Byzantine troops rode out to face the Ottomans, but it was a hopeless effort. Outnumbered, they could do very little damage before having to race back within the city. Frustrated, the Ottomans began a steady, coordinated barrage of cannon fire on the city walls. Day and night, the cannons boomed. Meanwhile, the Ottomans attempted several night attacks on the walls, but were always repelled by the Byzantines. The Ottomans weren't having much luck on the sea either. Their ships could not get past the chain to enter the Golden Horn. And on April 20th, 4 additional Venetian ships arrived, further bolstering the city's naval defenses. The breakthrough finally came on April 22nd. Ottoman engineers built a road of split logs across Galata. This allowed them to transport their ships across land and bypass the chain protecting the Golden Horn. A week later, the Byzantine Navy was surprised to see dozens of Ottoman ships suddenly appear behind them in the Golden Horn. The Byzantine ships swiftly moved to intercept them, using Greek fire to set many of them ablaze. But they were hopelessly outnumbered. One by one, the Ottomans destroyed the enemy fire ships. With no other choice, the remaining Byzantine ships retreated to the safety of the city's harbor. Now the Ottomans controlled the Golden Horn. Hundreds of troops streamed out of the ships and attacked Constantinople's northern walls. Giovanni Giustiniani sent soldiers to protect the north, which weakened his defenses on the main walls. By May 6, the Ottoman bombardment finally began to take its toll. Their cannons broke through the gate of St. Romanus, one of the most enormous gates in the city. Ottoman troops rushed forward into the breach. It was all Giovanni could do to beat them back. 5 days later, Ottoman cannons destroyed the Calagaria gates in the northeastern section of the city. This was near the Blachernae Palace, one of the emperor's many residences. Once again, Ottoman troops surged into the breach. This time, Emperor Constantine led the defense of this section, and once again, the Ottomans were beaten back. But the cracks in the city's defenses were beginning to show, and Sultan Mehmed II knew it. On May 29th, the Sultan ordered a full frontal assault on the city's walls. His cannons laid down a heavy barrage as Ottoman soldiers attacked all points of the wall. Despite brutal hand-to-hand combat, the Ottoman soldiers could not breach the walls and once again had to fall back. But the cannon fire created yet another breach in the gate of St. Romanus. Instead of regular infantry attacking this time, 3,000 elite Janissary troops rushed forward into the opening. The Janissaries suffered heavy casualties but managed to capture one of the towers on the wall, which gave the Ottomans a crucial toehold. Even worse for the Byzantines, Giovanni Giustiniani was injured in this assault and had to be carried away. The Ottomans pressed their advantage. Another 300 Janissaries rushed the wall, and this time, supported by their comrades in the tower, they were successful. The Byzantine defenders could not hold the Ottomans back without Giovanni to direct them. Terrified, they abandoned their positions and ran into the city towards the harbor. When the citizens of Constantinople saw the Byzantine soldiers running for their lives, they panicked and did the same. With no one protecting the walls, the Ottomans poured into the city. Emperor Constantine XI was killed during the final assault on the walls. Some say he led a desperate defense after Giovanni's troops fled and was killed in the fighting. Others say he committed suicide when it became clear the city was lost. Still, others say he was attacked and killed by a random Ottoman soldier who did not even know who he was. Whatever happened, Emperor Constantine XI was the last Roman emperor. When the Ottomans found his body, Sultan Mehmed II ordered his head cut off and placed on display as proof of the city's conquest. Reading about the sack of Constantinople on Wikipedia gives a very biased, one-sided account of this event. It makes it seem as if the Ottomans were bloodthirsty savages who enslaved the entire city. Leonard of Chios witnessed the horrible atrocities that followed the fall of Constantinople. The Ottoman invaders pillaged the city, enslaved tens of thousands of people, and raped women and children. Even nuns were subjected to sexual assault by the Ottomans. However, David Nicole gives a very different account in his book, Cross and Crescent in the Balkans, the Ottoman Conquest of Southeastern Europe. The ordinary people of Constantinople were treated better by their Ottoman conquerors than their ancestors had been by the Fourth Crusade in 1204. Only about 4,000 Greeks were killed in the taking of the city, which was very few in the circumstances. Sultan Mehmed II did not want to destroy the city since he planned to make it his new capital, but he did allow his soldiers to pillage the city for one day. And yes, indeed, some Ottoman soldiers committed atrocities while they were pillaging. However, depending on where you get your information, you might get different ideas about how destructive this pillaging was. One thing we know for sure is that the Ottomans were very disciplined and would have been disciplined in their pillaging as well. The Ottomans methodically moved through the city, securing different neighborhoods and protecting them from looting. However, since Constantinople was a large city, they could not protect all of it. Constantinople's allies caused some of the damage. The Venetians and Genoese looted several neighborhoods to the north as they fled the city for their ships in the Golden Horn. Prince Orhan, Mehmed's rival whom Emperor Constantine had tried to use against the Ottomans, was eventually captured. The unlucky prince tried to escape dressed as a monk, but was betrayed by one of his soldiers. The soldier who betrayed him earned his freedom by pointing out the prince. The prince was immediately executed and his head was presented to the Sultan. The luxurious Orthodox churches were prime targets for pillaging and looting. They contained statues of religious figures that Muslims deemed idolatrous and forbidden. They also contained valuable items such as jewels and ornaments. The statues were destroyed and the valuables were taken. The Sultan, however, forbade any pillaging of the Hagia Sophia and the Church of the Holy Apostles. These were the two most important churches in Constantinople, and he wanted to preserve them. He returned the Church of the Holy Apostles to the Christians of Constantinople, virtually untouched. 3 years after the conquest of Constantinople, the Orthodox abandoned the Church of the Holy Apostles in favor of the Pamakristos Church, which became their new headquarters. The Church of the Holy Apostles was demolished in 1461, and the Fatih Masjid now stands in its place. During the pillage of Constantinople, several wealthy citizens took refuge in Hagia Sophia. They believed in a prophecy that stated they could not be harmed inside the church. That prophecy was false. a group of Ottoman soldiers broke into the church and captured them. Those who could afford it were ransomed. Those who could not were sold into slavery. The Sultan had different plans for Hagia Sophia. On May 31st, 1453, he entered the city around noon and went straight to Hagia Sophia, which had been emptied of most of its Christian relics. He prayed Salatul Dhuhr, the noon prayer, then took a tour of the former church, marveling at its magnificent architecture. The next day, the Sultan ordered all pillaging to cease and the troops to return to their camps outside the city. The few remaining Byzantine garrisons surrendered peacefully. It was all over. Just as Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had predicted over 800 years earlier, the great city of Constantinople had fallen to Islam.